All right then. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Today we're going to be going through our Voly APA server, primarily for yacht captains and pursers is going to be the dedicated theme for today, how you can best use it and utilize that as a captain or a purser on a vessel, and the different ways you can input information and the ease of which you'll be able to reclaim that information for the charter. My name is Georgia. I'm one of the client trainers here at Voly.
And I'm Anastasia, another one of the client trainers here at Voly. As just previously mentioned, as we go through the platform today, if you do have any questions, just please pop them in the chat and we'll deal with it all at the end. As well, to make you guys aware, we do have a promotional offer going on for our APA platform at the moment of 6 months free. So if that's something that piques your interest after we've gone through the webinar today, please get in contact and we'll be able to arrange all of that for you. All right, so to begin with today, we're going to take a look at our platform. So with our platform, for those who haven't seen it already, our APA platform, once you have logged in, is this nice bright orange. This helps us to differentiate with the operational services that we provide. It also applies to the Voly prepaid cards you can get. We separate it all out, bright orange for the platform and the cards, and even that new mobile app we have coming in the next few weeks, just to make it easier for captain, crew, and pursers to differentiate. With our APA platform, the big key feature that helps differentiate between this one and the operational with how we add money in for our guests is this APA balances widget here. You'll be able to see this from a captain purser level when you log in on your home screen. If you have any current guests set up, you'll be able to see it like I have this little example one here, and you are able to see what remaining funds they have for their charter. But with this guest, they're done, they're dusted, and I have a new one coming on board. So we're going to set that up together today. So to do that, it's really straightforward. We'll do plus new charter. We'll type in our guest's surname. So with our guests, we always recommend their surname and then the date range that they're on the vessel. This is just in case you have any repeat guests and help prevent any accidental transaction invoice tagging to a previous time they visited. As well as adding that name and date range, we're going to include how much they were contracted to send across to our vessel. So for myself and George today, we'll be running a low cost charter. So we're going to have €600 in the account. And then for our funding source, we are going to say it's coming from our central agent. So that's the money coming into Voly. We're going to add that charter. So we'll then be able to see it on our APA balances widget there on our home screen, which we can refer back to as we continue our charter. And as we start adding those transactions, adding those invoices, we'll be able to see that number go down. At this point though, this is not the physical funds coming into the account. We're going to have to add that and account for that today. So we are going to do that by going into our banking tab, because that guest account we've just created on that widget is now available under here in client accounts. Your client accounts are always listed in alphabetical order. And again, we'll go more into it later on, but you can reduce how many you see as you go through the season. For our guest today, everything's listed here and we have that €600 in the account, but we need the actual money now. So during that time, our central agent would have sent the funds across into our Voly money account, which we'll find just further down the page. From a captain and purser point of view, you'll be able to see if you have multiple floats like I have here with my Euro and my USD. And then you'll be able to see how much is in the float at any time and any funds coming in. So for my guest, I have my unprocessed item. So I'm going to allocate the money to that account today. As we can see, it's broken down and said it's coming into my USD flow and I have 500 USD to add to the account. Because my vessel is reporting in Euro and we are doing a Mediterranean charter, this will incur a conversion as well. So to start with, I'm going to say, who is this money from? And this is coming from my guest Jones today. It's automatically done that conversion for me. So the 500 USD is converted into 451 euro. And then I'm going to add it to my cost center. So cost centers is something that you'll see throughout this webinar today. And this is basically how we connect our transactions to our guests to see it on our reports. So when we click process, the physical money has now been allocated to that guest. We can add it to our cards, be able to make our payments from the system with it. but we do also need to account for one more thing in the system, and that is any intermediary bank fees, any broker fees, anything along those lines. Voly fees will already be in the system once you process that transaction. So then to add anything extra, you will go into the client's account and you'll be able to see what has been recorded so far. So in our account, we have the €600 we said the guest was going to send across originally. We have the money coming into the account. So this is how much we've actually received. And as we can see, we have a balance of 148.2. This is basically money that has been taken during the journey from our central agent to the Voly money account. If it was any Voly money fees, there would be a separate line here for you, but we are wanting this balance to be zero today to be an accurate representation of how much money our guest has left for their charter. So what we're going to do, we're going to add that in as a new bank transaction here at the top today. We'll add in our transaction date. So again, all of these steps that we're doing can be done before the guest arrives. So if you have back-to-back charters, even if you've not yet received the funds, you can add them to the system ready to go to save you that time and efficiency. And if you know about any bank fees, once the funds are processed, you can add all of that in. So I'm going to add in that account charge today. I'm going to label it as bank fees. So then when my guest sees this in their reports, they know exactly what this is for. That cost center's come up again, so we're going to tag it to our guest, and then we're going to include how much that is. Once that has been added, this client account is now at a zero, so we have an accurate representation of how much money my guest has left, and we'll be able to see that reflected both on that APA balance widget on our homepage and in our reports. So if I go back to that homepage, we'll now be able to see the widget has updated, and my guest has €451.80 left to spend. But then as well, if you're not always wanting to refer back to the widget and you'd like to see a bit more in detail information to see what has been allocated to the guest, what's been spent so far, you can do this throughout the charter under the reports tab. With the reports tab, there's quite a few that you can run. So we have the transaction detail report, which if you are using our operational account already, you'll know it just pulls through all the transactions that have happened on the vessel within a time frame. But the ones you'll be using for the charters is your APA detail and APA summary report. The detail report and the summary report all run off of cost center. So you don't have to worry about the date range at this time. Just make sure you've got the right guest displayed here. And then you can see which currency you'd like to view it in. So you can have it in the same reporting currency as the vessel. If the guest would like to see this report in their own currency, whatever that might be, you can select it from the drop down here. To view the report, we'll highlight here, and everything we've added so far has been listed. So the funds in, those bank fees, it's all broken down for us with that exact amount that we saw on that APA balance widget. We will be coming more into reports later on, but as we go through our webinar today, add more information, we'll keep coming back to this report and we'll be able to see it all added in here. This is great, especially for things like cross charges and any invoice payments, which Georgia is going to go over for us today.
Yes, so when we talk about cross charges, of course, that's one of the biggest questions we get asked is, can you record cross charges? And of course, how do you do that? So the answer is yes, of course, you can add on any cross charges, anything that needs to be paid back to the vessel. And it's nice and easy to do this, especially if you are used to using our operational platform, because it's all done through the invoices tab just here. So as Captain and Purser access on the platform, you'll be able to see all invoices that are from previous charters, regardless of which charter they belong to or anything like that, full visibility on there. You'll then be able to add new invoices for any cross charges that you need to add for this specific charter. So if we carry on then with our Jones example today, we'll click on add invoice. And then we'll be able to add in the invoice. As I said, if you're familiar with the operational platform, this is going to be quite familiar to you also. The only thing that really differs in terms of what you're going to be inputting is going to be the supplier. So instead of having a generic supplier from an external supplier or a shop, you'll be able to instead input a supplier name that resembles the vessel operational account. So if you've got a Voly operational account, you can label it as, your Voly operational account on here, or you might just choose to import the vessel name to make it really clear what that's referring to. So we're using our Mary Celeste example here. So there we can see I've got my Mary Celeste example as my supplier. And then if you are creating the supplier for the first time, just make sure the currency is reflected of the currency you want to pay those cross charges over in. You're then going to fill in all the relevant information here. Now, with the way cross charges work, you can either input one invoice that has all the cross charges all together. So you can then have multiple lines on there, or you can have multiple invoices per item. So maybe you want to raise one for fuel, one for wine, one for anything else that's been raised on there. So keep things nice and simple for this example. I'm going to make it all just into one invoice. Your invoice number and invoice file are going to need to be generated outside of the platform to then be uploaded by yourselves on there. Now, as usual, the system allows you to update JPEGs, PNG, and PDF format files. So if you are creating your own branded invoice for the operational expenses, you would just need to make sure that when you are exporting that, it is in one of those free file formats. In my description, this is going to be something that the guest is going to be able to see in the itemized breakdown of the transaction detail report or the APA detail report. So I'm going to make it really clear what has this invoice is representative of. So in my instance here, we're going to say cross charges. Then when we get down to our line breakdown, I'm going to now say what each and every item is and make sure it's assigned to the correct category on there. So for mine here, I'm going to say that this was the fuel consumption. We've then got the category to select, and then of course the cost center, so that this is going to be showing in the report and showing against the amount of funds left against that charter. Now you can choose how you want to pop in the breakdown. If you have the net value and the VAT value to input, you can show that as well. That'll be something the guests will be able to see. Or like I am today, you can just go in with the total for that line. Now you've got the option, you can either create a duplicated line, have a blank line, or you can continue with a single line invoice. But I'm going to create a secondary line to show the wine from stock on there. So again, choosing the relevant category, because this is something we'll be able to see in those reports, and making sure it's assigned to the correct charter on there. We've now got our total at the bottom here that's going to be deducted from that available charter funds from the client. So when we click Save Invoice, that's automatically going to show as deducted from the available balance on that initial widget on the home screen that Anna's already been through with us, as well as on those reports, regardless of whether it's paid or unpaid. So right now, we've got it as unpaid. It's not quite ready to be paid just yet. But if we select our applicable charter in these reports here, we'll then be able to see that we've already got our two lines, the two categories on there, and a total spend in the reporting currency and a deduction from the overall balance. Now, another common one we get asked is around crew tips. So inputting crew tips onto the system again to show that as money out of the report. So that's going to be done in exactly the same way. So you'd come to your invoices page here. Now, if you're wanting to pay crew tips directly to crew users, which you would be able to do, you'll be able to raise an invoice per crew member on the vessel. So again, creating an invoice with their allocated crew tip amount, and then also creating their name as a supplier. Now we'll get onto payments in a bit more in the future on the webinar today. But one thing to note as well is that if you are making payments back to an operational account, whether that be the tips being sent back to the operational account or whether it be the cross charges, they are of course free of charge with it being between Voly accounts. It's going to cost you when it's coming into other types of payments, but we'll come into that a bit later. Anna's also now going to go through with us any other types of payments that we might be entering onto the system and showing us how we can reflect those in the reports as well.
Perfect, thank you. So back on our banking page, with captain and purser permissions, you will be able to see not only those client accounts we touched base on earlier, the Voly money accounts, but our prepaid cards and any cash accounts. As you can see with my vessel today, I have a couple of cards. I can see the available balance, which will update in real time as I'm using it. I have the statement balance, which updates every 24 hours roughly. And then here at the end, I have my unprocessed items. This just basically means I've used my card to buy services, goods, and I need to attach supporting documentation and assign it to the relevant guest, the relevant charter. So to do that today, I'm going to click on the unprocessed items. With the cards being fully integrated, it will pre-populate key facts, key information for you. So the transaction date, the description, and the amount is already provided by the card for you. So when we click on process, we'll be able to see all of that information. We'll be able to attach our receipt file. So again, in that PDF, PNG, JPEG format. If you are wanting to use our mobile app, you can take photos within the app directly. We do have a version that is out at the moment, but we do have a dedicated APA mobile app coming out in the next few weeks, which you'll be able to log in and use too. Outside of that receipt, you have the item category. So what is this cost in relation to? So for today, I'm going to say it's to do with some decorations and flowers for our guest, and we're going to assign it to our guest with that cost center. With all that information filled in, we can leave it as it is, but let's say with this description, I'd like to be a bit more specific for my guests. So what I'm going to do is remove the pre-populated text, and then I'm going to say it was some decorations, and it was for a 21st birthday. 21st, not first. There we go. I'm also going to add my supplier back in so my guest knows where it was I was purchasing these items from. Once you've been on the system for a little while, adding in transactions, you will have a pre-populated supplier list similar to what I have here. But when you're doing this for the first time, you can add in that supplier by typing it in the box here at the end, and then you'll be able to add as a new supplier, and it'll be there ready for you to use next time, like I have here today. As well, you have the option to copy and add lines. So let's say we're purchasing multiple items from Amazon, but it's not just for our one guest. We can add a line, fill in the necessary information, and assign it to that different guest, that different cost center if we wanted to. We just need to make sure whatever the final figure is down here at the bottom matches the final figure here at the top, because the great thing about our prepaid cards is that they auto balance, auto reconcile, so you never have to worry about the numbers being wrong when using those prepaid cards. With all of that filled in, we're now going to process our transaction, and we will see if we go back to our homepage that $684 will have been deducted from that APA balance, as well as that invoice that Georgia has just very nicely put in for us. So as we can see, my guest Jones, as it stands, has €193 left to spend. With the prepaid cards, you can use them online, in-store, and to withdraw cash from an ATM. And then depending on how you'd like to operate with cash on board, there's multiple ways that you can log it. You can withdraw from the initial funds from the guest using a card and assign it to the cash account and have the purchases that way. If you already have petty cash on board, you can add the cash purchases for the guest in the system, and then we can get the cash back at the end of the charter. Just depends on how you'd like to do it. So for today, we're going to say my guest didn't want us to withdraw cash, and we're going to add a cash purchase to their account. So then they do owe us some cash later on, which we'll be able to sort out. So in our cash account at the bottom of the banking page, we can do new purchase. All of the information required is exactly the same as like with a prepaid card transaction. It is just you have to provide the information. So we'll add in our purchase date. We'll say with this one, we went to a market and we bought some wine. We'll add how much it costs. So let's say they spent €75, tag it to our guest, attach that receipt file. Again, depending on where you are in the world, sometimes some market stores might not give you a printed receipt. It might be something written down. As long as you upload it, whether you use our app or scan it in and convert it into a PDF, PNG, or JPEG, the system will accept it for you. Make sure you add in that description. So we're going to say it was some wine, and this time went for some white and rosé. Just make sure that our guest fully knows what it is that we're buying with their money. And then as well, we have the option to add our supplier. So with this one, I'm going to say we just went to a market and we were in Greece, and that's what we've got it tagged to. I'm now going to add that purchase on by clicking save. And then if we go back to that APA detail report we were referring back to earlier, we'll be able to see all those transactions listed here. The great thing about the reports page is it does pre-populate with the last thing you searched. So if I click on view report, it'll tell us about the invoice that Georgia added. but then we'll be able to see our cash expenditure listed here, our card expenditure. But then if we scroll down to the bottom where it gives us our final APA amount, we can see that that guest owes us €75 in cash, which when it comes to the end of the charter, we can discuss and arrange with them. With all of this, again, as Georgia mentioned when she was adding in the invoice, we have not yet paid it, but we can add that in whether it is before the charter ends or after the guest has left the vessel. And Georgia is going to go through that for us just now.
I've muted there. With payments then, the way we can do that is through the invoices page as well. So as Anna's just mentioned there, this can be done before the end of the charter if you want to make sure everything's all fully there and accounted for, or it can be done after the charter's finished when the guests are off board as well. So different ways depending on what you have time to do and how you prefer to do it. So to make payments using the money in the Voly Money account, there's a couple of different steps. So the first thing we're going to do is come into the invoices page and have a look at those outstanding invoices for this charter. So you'll have a look at the supplier, and if you've got this little blue B here, that's really great because that means you've already got the beneficiary details attached. So if it's one you've set up before and you're just reusing the same supplier, you might not have to do this step. However, if it is a new supplier, maybe it's the first charter you're running on the platform, maybe you've got a new crew member that needs their bank details added into the system, and then that's what we're going to do first to make sure that we're able to send that money directly from the system over to the relevant bank account. So to do this, we're going to go to the suppliers page, and then we're going to locate the supplier we need to add the corresponding bank details to. So there's different ways you can do this. You can scroll through them. They're in alphabetical order, and these are ones that have been created when you've been creating invoices, adding suppliers to purchases, or you can search as well using the filters area just here. So if you have a specific one in mind, you can search for it just there. Let's say then that this supplier here at the top is a new crew member I've got on board, and they've just provided to me their bank details, so I'm able to send their tip over. So the first thing I'm going to do is click into that account. And then we're going to click straight into supplier details. Now, this supplier details area allows you to store specific details to the supplier for further reference. But when we're talking about adding bank details, we need to be using the create beneficiary button just here. So to create a beneficiary, you need to have, of course, the bank details to hand. Input then the bank country. So again, you can search through there in alphabetical order or use the search bar here if you're going to search for it directly. We've also then got these required information. So this is based off, of course, the bank country, and then also underneath the beneficiary address. So you'll input all these required informational pieces, and then the system will allow you to click the submit details button down at the bottom just here. Once you submit the details, that's then going to do a really quick verification. So the system's just checking that those bank details do in fact exist. The address matches the IBAN and the BIC, for example, and that is a valid bank details submitted. Once you've done that and the verification is completed, you'll then have that blue B next to the supplier on that suppliers list and also on the invoices page just here next to the supplier name, as we can see here. Let's say it's slightly older supplier, you're new to the vessel and you're not too sure if that's up-to-date details. You'll be able to click on that blue B and see the details that have been submitted. So if it is that those details are now outdated, you can go to the suppliers page, locate that supplier, and then if needed, remove the beneficiary details and upload new ones on there as well. Once you've got the beneficiary details attached, it means that it's now ready to make payments to that supplier from the Voly platform. So the next step is going to be to add that physical payment. So we're going to click add payment. The system's then going to pull through some information already, such as the date and the amount. And then we've got this account drop down. So when you use your account drop down, you'll be able to see the client accounts, but of course they're just operating as reflections for the reports. So that's not where the physical money is. The physical money is always going to be located in your Voly Money accounts. And in this area, it's referred to as Voly Money wallets. So you can choose your accurate currency you want to make the payment from or the relevant account. And you'll be able to see then as well, you have the ability to change the amount for this invoice. So if you're paying the full value, you can leave it as selected there. Or if you just need to pay a deposit amount to a supplier, or it's just, an amount at this point paying half, you can change that amount on there nice and easily like so. You'll also have this payment reference pulled through. Now, this is going to be the reference accompanying the payment, and by default, it's the invoice number that the invoice was submitted with. But you again have the ability to change this if there's a more accurate reference that you need to add on there. So you can add in phrases, words, letters, numbers, however you need it to be for that one. Underneath that, you'll be able to see a cost. Now, if it's the same currency as the initial invoice has been invoiced to, of course, the cost will remain the same. But if it is an out of currency payment, the system will then tell you how much that's going to cost you in the currency that you are making the payment in. You've then also got the receipt file. This isn't something that you'll need to import. It's not a compulsory field, but you will need to input your cost center. So again, selecting whose charter this relates to. Once you're happy with all that information and you click add payment, that's then going to update the payment status to awaiting execution when you hover over it here. So we can see it's pending and it needs that second stage of approval. So all payments require those two steps, creating the payment and executing it. And that's just to make sure that you've not accidentally clicked add payment too early. It gives you opportunities to go and double check the information as well. And it also means that if it is you're a captain and a purser on the boat and you want to make sure you've got two sets of eyes on there, you can have it where the purser, for example, is creating the payment and the captain's executing it to double check the information on there. To execute the payment, it's nice and easy. We go into our approvals tab here and you'll be able to see any outstanding payments. Now you can see we've got a lot of outstanding payments on our vessel. Hopefully yours will be a lot neater than ours. But if I scroll down, we've now got my €25 payment here and I'm going to click on pay now. At this stage, it's going to pull through the updated reference. So if there was a change that you have made, you can see it pulled through. If you forgot to make the change and you need to change it again or have the information now in front of you, you can update it there. You can also change which account you're paying it from as well at this stage. Now, one thing to note is if you don't have enough in the account, so this amount here is currently how much is available in the account. So for this €25 payment, that's absolutely fine. But the money on the Voly prepaid cards is pulled from, of course, the Voly money account as well. So if you are making these payments at the end of the charter, where you're getting down to the last few hundred or thousand, make sure that all the cards are unloaded so the money is back in the Voly money account to be making these payments through the system. Once you've double checked all the information, you'll also have the option here to see if there's any other payment methods. So for mine, I've actually got it set up to go to my Voly operational account, so there's no extra costs incurred. If you have got an extra cost incurred, maybe it's having to go via Swift, you'll be able to see the final cost here is going to be the amount that's going to be deducted from your account or the Voly money account on that one. Because we've selected a cost center when creating this payment, if there is any additional payment fees, that's also going to then show as a separate line in the reports and a deduction from the overall balance on the charter funds for that guest. You'll now be receiving at the same point a 6-digit code unique to this specific payment. That'll come through WhatsApp or SMS message. And once you've input that, you'll have the ability to then click execute. Once you execute the payment, the funds will then be released from the Voly money account to the bank account, whether it be a supplier bank account, your own operational account, or a crew account if you're paying tips. And then once the invoice payment has been finalized, you'll be able to see on the invoices page that the payment status will update to paid. And you'll also be able to see any payment information from the relevant account you've sent the funds from. So for example, if it was from the Euro account, when clicking into that Euro account on my system, you'll then be able to see the payment and see the payment information, including which invoice it relates to as well on there. As I said, all that information is also going to pull through into the reports. So when we take a look at the report, you'll notice that when we take a look at the detailed report and we see our invoice, at the minute, the document number is asterisk, meaning it's unpaid, but once that payment's completed, that asterisk will be removed. So again, when you're reviewing the reports very quickly, it'll be clear to see what's been paid and unpaid. But Anna's got a bit more information for us on the reports and a few key features we can do on there as well.
Perfect. So again, once it is, whether it is you decide to do the payments before the guest leaves or you want to do it all in-house after the guest has left the vessel, you can view all of this in your report. So again, I have my detail report pulled up here. Again, we've been checking it throughout the charter. We can see how much our guest has left. If it is before they leave the vessel and we can see they have an outstanding balance, that is where you can have the conversation about crew tips. Would they like the money to be sent to them? You then also have the option to download each report that you run as a PDF document. So with our detail report, once downloaded, it will be broken down like so the guests can see all of the information. We do also have our summary report, which is very popular amongst captains pursers because it also has a sign-off sheet. So with the summary report, as you can see, it's the same key information as the detail summary, but once we've downloaded it, when we view, we have this information here. So you have each category, you have the guest sign off, and then you also have a captain sign off. We do also have a new feature within this as well, which is our report pack. So again, if I run my report to the correct guest, the right cost center, what I can do is add to report pack. And then here at the top, you have this new tab, which is where you can add both the detail and the summary report for the guest. Outside of Voly, what you can do is create a front cover, table of contents. If you want to do like a thank you for joining us on board, that type of information, you can create that and upload as an ad page as a PDF. Once you have everything and you've used these tabs to reorganize, set everything how you'd like to view, you can download the report pack, which again will run all of the reports added once more to make sure it's the most correct and up-to-date information. And then once downloaded, it will look something very similar to this. So here I have my cover page, and then we have my detail report, and then I have that summary report with the sign-off sheet. I can get my guests to sign off on it, make sure they're all happy with it. And then I have this here. I can keep it on board. I can also scan it back in to re-upload to Voly later on, just as confirmation the guest is happy with what to do with those remaining funds as well. This is something, if you want to go over it in more detail, we'll be more than happy to go over it on a one-on-one, depending on how you'd like to operate and use the system. Again, once that is all done and all the sign-offs are completed, you then have that option of what's happening with the remaining funds. Is it tips? And are we going to add that as an invoice and send to our crew? Or would the guests like that returning to them? Returning funds is what Georgia is going to finalize with us today. And she's going to take over and go over from here.
On the reports, then what you'll be able to do is rerun the report. So view report just to make sure that all the information is up to date. You'll then be able to see that final balance here at the bottom as the amount that's to be returned to the guest. So in my instance here, it's 131 USD on that one and 44 cents. So what I'm going to do now is going to be sending this money back to the client. Now, to do this, again, it's nice and easy on the system. Rather than having to raise an invoice and then create that guest as a supplier, the easiest way to do it is to come to the banking page just here, and then coming back to that client account we created at the very start of the charter. So clicking into the relevant client, and then you should be able to see at the top of the screen just there, you've got the create beneficiary option. So this is going to tie those bank details directly to this client's account rather than having to create it in multiple places across the system. And of course, it means that they're not going to be then stored as a supplier in the future to minimize risks of things being sent to the wrong place on there. You've then got the create beneficiary button. So you'll click this. And again, it's a familiar looking screen from when we were creating beneficiary from suppliers. But again, inputting the relevant banking country, filling in all the information. And then when you submit it, the system will still do a quick verification just to make sure those bank details do exist for you to send the money to. Once you've created that beneficiary on the system, you'll then see that blue B again next to the corresponding client account name, just so you'll always have visibility over those and you'll have the ability to change them as well. So if you have input the wrong ones or a wrong detail, you'll be able to delete them off and create them again if needed. Once you've got those beneficiary details attached to the client's account, all you'll need to do now is go to the relevant currency account that the funds need to be returned from. So in this instance, it would be the USD account. And again, with ours being a demo, the funds aren't there, but on yours will be. we'll click on return funds, and then you'll have the option to select your client's account that has the beneficiary details attached. So if we say that this was our Jones one, we've got the relevant payment method as well, and then the amount to return. So it was that 13170.44 on that one. And then you click in return funds, and then we can see it's letting us know the payment's been added and now is awaiting execution. So still those two-step process. So you'll then be able to go into the approvals tab to release those funds, making sure the payment reference is how you would like it to look, and adding in the relevant method of payment on there as well if you do need to update that at all. Once that's all finished and that will then show in your reports, the final balance will then revert to 0 on those reports. And then you'll have the ability as well to archive off the accounts. So of course, everything's nice and neat, and it means that it's not going to be clogging up the widget or anything on the home page for you there. You've got ready a clean slate for the next charter on that one. Okay, so
perfect. Now's time for any questions. So if anyone does have anything, please pop it in the chat. We do have, George just kind of touched base on it. A very common question we do have is, can you hide previous charters? So you can do that with archiving the accounts, which again, is labeled out in the user guide, and we're more than happy to go through outside of the session today. You can also hide out the cost centers from that APA balance widget. So once you're done with that guest, you can hide it from view and focus on that one guest at a time. So again, that's something we can go over there. Any other questions? Anything? You got anything, Georgia?
Yeah, we just had one question through. Where can I store the signed APA report? So a good one for that one is, I'll very quickly just share my screen on there, is we can download that report and we can enable something called the repository, which means that you'll then be able to store that within this platform. So unfortunately, I don't have it enabled just here, but if you let us know which vessel it is that you'd like to do it on, we can enable that for you. But it does mean that then it works as like a OneDrive. So any downloaded reports that you have or scanned in, if they are the signed off ones, you'd be able to then store within the repository, and you'd be able to access that at any time. It'd stay on the system historically. Also, any reports that you have run or client accounts that you have used previously, you'd always be able to reaccess and rerun reports for as well.
All right. Do we have any other questions before we head off today? Doesn't look like it. Oh, let's have a look. Excellent. All right. So just to let you guys know, if you did enjoy today's webinar, we do have another one coming in the next couple of weeks on the 12th of June. And it is again focusing on our new Voly mobile app. So again, if you are looking forward to that, interested, please sign up. You'll see the links available to you. The session today will also be sent out to you guys for you to go back over, and it will be available to watch online as well. If you do have any further questions, you're not wanting to put them in the chat, obviously, please reach out and we'll be more than happy to go through. And as well, just to remind you, we do have that offer going on for the APA platform at the moment, which is that 6 months free. So again, get in contact. All right. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Yep. And we're going to leave you all to enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Bye everyone. Bye.